This is an introduction to Gyroflow for MotionCam. This is just going to be a quick thing. It won't go super in depth, but it should give most people a quick start on how to use it. I recently went out backpacking with some friends, and I came back with a few video files that I want to stabilize. And the setup that I typically do is I open up Gyroflow here, and then I have my video files in a window over here, and then I have my lens profiles over here. Making lens profiles is a whole separate thing. There are some pretty good guides online to doing that, so I'm not going to go into it right now, but if you want to make your own lens profiles, that's this button right here. You can open the calibration target, do all that stuff. It's not terribly complex, but you need to make sure that you have good lens profiles, otherwise the distortion correction won't work and you'll get weird shaky video even though everything else is working. So if I wanted to stabilize one of these videos, let's drag this into here, and you can see if I play it, let's mute the audio. You see if I play it, that's what it looks like. It's pretty shaky. This was recorded on a Galaxy S25 base version, and I just kind of attach it to my trekking pole, so it has a pretty good like selfie view. This is difficult to stabilize without gyro stuff because we've got static subjects here, we've got a lot of motion, lots of parallax effects. It's kind of a mess. This is exactly the type of thing that Gyroflow is for. The first thing you want to do after opening up your file is to make sure that you have motion data loaded. And MotionCam is actually pretty good at titling the gyro data in such a way that Gyroflow should pick it up automatically. If you look over here, you can see that that video file that I had, the 332, has a corresponding 332 gyro data file. And if you open this up, this is not magic. It just has some identifying information. It has, I'm not exactly sure what these are, but then here it has some time information and some information about what each of the gyro's axes are reading. And for every single frame, it has some gyro information. And it loads that in, and that is what this graph down here appears as. If you load in a video file and Gyroflow doesn't automatically pick this up, you won't see any gyro information down here, and you'll have to take this file and manually drag it into motion data, and it'll load in. But the nice thing is that MotionCam does title things appropriately, so that way it should load automatically. What doesn't load automatically? Lens profiles. And these are necessary to get good stabilization. So that's where I have my own lens profiles over here. However, I have the 16:9 profile loaded, and that won't work for this because this is 4:3 video. The Galaxy S25 can do 4:3 at 24 frames per second without dropped frames. So I'm going to go to my 4:3 profiles that I created. So here's the 14mm, so I'm going to drag that over here, and you'll see the field of view changes a little bit as it loads in this information. And now we're ready to actually stabilize. The thing that makes Gyroflow work, the magic behind it, is syncing this gyro information to the exact frame of this video information. If Gyroflow knows exactly what gyro data is happening at exactly this frame and all the other frames, it can kind of compute what the camera path is and smooth it out. It doesn't actually compute the camera path, but it does some wonderful math in order to smooth out your video. But the problem is it has to be exact. Every frame has to match up. And this is the reason why drop frames are so catastrophic. You're off by one frame, the gyro data is going to be off and it's going to look terrible. So this is where you have to synchronize. You have to have Gyroflow figure out what frame corresponds to which gyro data point. And in some other cameras, like dedicated cameras, like Sony cameras, that synchronization happens at a camera level. There's a known offset and it just works, and it's wonderful, and Gyroflow knows how to pick up on that information, and it's perfect each time. But for MotionCam and other types of cameras, you have to do that synchronization a bit more manually. Now, thankfully, Gyroflow is pretty easy, and that's what this auto sync button is for. It will analyze the motion in the frame using optical flow techniques and also look at the corresponding gyro data and say, okay, what's the most likely matchup here? And then it tries to match that up, and it does a pretty good job most of the time, and then you synchronize your video to your gyro data. So here's the first pitfall that a lot of people, if they get bad stabilization, here's probably where they're messing up. It's not their fault, because the default values for the synchronization are not 2 seconds and 1 sync point. That's what I do. You don't need more than 1 sync point unless your gyro drifts. So I typically do 1, but I think the default values are more like 0.5. Now, the problem is that if I were to do, let's exaggerate it. Let's do like only 0.2 seconds. And I hit this auto sync button. It's going to pick a region, I think right in the middle, do some optical flow on it. You can see it turned a bit white there to show that it has optical flow on it. And you can see kind of the optical flow marker things, and it's going to try to place a sync point. But in this case, the search size wasn't large enough for it to do anything. So it actually wasn't able to find a good match for the optical flow information to the gyro information, and it didn't work. So a lot of times when new users hit auto sync, it won't work because the search size isn't big enough. It's not picking up good information, and they won't get good stabilization. And they can increase the amount of sync points as much as they want. It won't make a difference. What I'd recommend for most MotionCam users, start at 2 seconds. Yes, it will take longer because it has to search through 2 seconds, but then when I hit auto sync here, you'll see if you look down here, it's going to search through more, run optical flow approximation, more of stuff. And look, we got something. Gyroflow is saying that at minus 1,111 milliseconds, that's where it thinks it has to offset the gyro data to perfectly match the video information. And if I play, it worked. Look at that. That's beautiful. This is the whole reason why I love Gyroflow. It worked. But you would never reach this point if you didn't have a search size large enough for it to find. And you can see the reason why. It had to offset this by 1.1 seconds. So if you're having trouble with Gyroflow, try increasing the search sync size. If you're above 5 seconds and you're still not finding good results, then there's probably something else wrong. But 2 seconds I've found to be pretty decent for it. The time where you would want more sync points is if you have a very long video and you're going to potentially run into an issue where the gyro data is going to drift slightly. And in that case, what you'd want to do is you'd put 2 sync points. And if I right click here and delete all sync points to kind of get back to shaky footage, if I auto sync, Gyroflow will automatically take something from the beginning, and it should pick up something more towards the end here. Look at that. And now you can see that it's approximating these at are minus 1,111, but this one's slightly different because there's probably just a little bit of drift here. And it still is working really good. So if you have really long video files, you might need to put a second data point, a sync point near the end. But most of the time for shorter stuff like this, I mean, this is only, 50 seconds, you don't really need that. I'll move on to the second point where most people run into problems, and that's actually with the lens profile. And this really sucks because it's hard to troubleshoot if you have a bad lens profile or if just there's something else weird going on. Most of the time, though, it's the lens profile. These really do have to be perfect. And the reason why is that if I, let's see, here. If I take the lens correction down, you can see that the video file is changing. Oh, that's doing weird stuff. It's changing the video file just a little bit, but that because it's correcting for distortion. But that little bit will show up as shakiness because Gyroflow won't know that this pixel is actually supposed to be slightly shifted. Gyroflow works with pure math, and it needs to know exactly what your camera lens is doing to the picture. Otherwise, it won't work out right. So for an example of what's going on here, I'm going to load in the wrong lens profile. And if I can, oh, my mouse is doing the thing where it kind of locks up on me. Okay, there we are. If I load the wrong lens profile in, you'll get an error if the aspect ratio or these dimensions doesn't match up with your input footage. And you can see here, it's pretty close. 4096 to 4032, that's close. But watch what happens when I delete all these sync points and then try to just do one sync point. And you don't have to hit auto sync if you don't want to. That will just run a 2-second search with however many sync points. What you can do is just down here, just hit A, and that will add it'll auto sync here. And for most video files, it doesn't matter where you sync, and it'll still use the 2-second search, whatever search size here. It'll still use that for when you hit A to just kind of add a point on, wherever you'd like. So if I do this, you can see that it did manage to pick up the correct gyro offset. We know that for this video file and this gyro data, it's minus 1,000 or 1.1 seconds. But if I play, that's off. Slightly. It's still off. This is not perfect stabilization. And the unfortunate thing about how us human eyes see motion is that if it's not perfectly smooth, it is not going to look good. So this, if you see something like this, it's probably because your lens profile is off. And for that, remake a lens profile, ask others what they have if you've made your lens profile a bunch of times and it still doesn't work, but it's probably something wrong with the lens profile. However, I'm going to show you the third way that we tend to get bad results in what we do to troubleshoot it. So if I drag that lens profile back on, you can see that it's still shaky because auto sync does take into account the lens profile over here. So delete those sync points, hit A to resync at a point there, and it should work. And there we are. We're back to our perfectly smooth stabilization. But there's a setting over here that is another quirk of cameras that can ruin stabilization, and that's rolling shutter correction right here. I've done testing to figure out what rolling shutter correction is for this sensor, but if I turn it off, look at that, we're back to, it's not stable. But we know we have the right offset right here, but it's still not stable because we didn't enable rolling shutter correction. And here's the unfortunate, infuriating thing. This type of bad stabilization looks a hell of a lot like a bad lens profile. And knowing the difference between the two, that is just down to trial and error. You gotta have a perfect lens profile, you gotta have perfect rolling shutter correction in order for this to look good. So if I re-enable it, and let's say that I don't actually know what the rolling shutter correction is, the way that I figure these things out is just with trial and error. And it's not hard to do this. So if let's pull the playhead back here, and if I play and I slowly increase this, I'm gonna notice that, oh, it's starting to get better. That looks better. That looks better. Oh, that looks really good. That also looks really good. But if I increase it too much, oh, that doesn't look good. And if I go way up, we can see it's overcompensating now. I maybe should have mentioned this earlier. For those of you that aren't familiar with what rolling shutter is an artifact of how most camera sensors are made. They don't read out the picture all at once. They read it out from top to bottom, bottom to top, or side to side. Most of the time it's, most of the time it's from top to bottom. And so when you have motion that's really fast, like a jerky camera, the top of the frame, the top of the image, is read out before the bottom. And that results in, if I take this down to 0, that results in kind of warpiness where the top is skewed from the bottom. Gyroflow has this wonderful built-in correction that will unskew the frame of the video in order to provide perfect stabilization. But you need to know exactly what the frame readout time. How long does it take for this sensor to read out from top to bottom? There are some tests that you can do with flashing lights to get very precise information of what your sensor is. I didn't have access to that hardware, and it is pretty easy just to approximate it. I'm pretty sure that I found it was good at 11.59, and look at that. That's nearly perfect. Now, you'll notice that there is still some shake in those corners. Maybe I didn't dial in maybe I didn't dial it in perfectly. So let's see. There's still just a little bit of shake. Maybe that's because I don't have this dialed in perfectly. Maybe it's because the lens profile isn't exact. The smallest of detail of deviations can introduce artifacts in these corners, but this is good enough for me. This is smooth enough that if I put this in a video, I could tell a good story without the warpiness and the shake distracting from the good story. And at the end of the day, that's what's most important. We're telling stories here. We're trying to create beautiful video, and smooth video, in my opinion, is part of that. Those are the three most common pitfalls that I have run into, that I've found. I'm gonna move on to some other things. One thing that can really help is lock horizon. This just locks the gyro of, I guess, whatever axis is the horizon, and it produces results that usually look a lot more stable. The other thing that can help is that if you're exporting this video, 4:3 open gate recording will produce more room for the stabilization to kind of crop in. And I haven't clicked this button yet, but this button's so fun. Look at this, it shows what's actually going on here. 4:3 or more of a square ratio makes it so that there's more information for the gyro information to compensate. But most of the time we are exporting in 16:9. So to get this to export in 16:9, you want to go down to your export settings and click the 4K preset. This is the UHD 3840 by 2160. Click that, and you'll notice that if I untoggle this, here we are at beautiful 16:9. And even though we're delivering in 16:9, the fact that we have more information on the top and bottom means that we get good stabilization with a less of a crop, because we still are cropping in here. And this is especially important if we are trying to lock the horizon, because it gives more information on the top and bottom for that rotation to work. So that's one of the reasons why I'm pleased with my S25, is it can record 4:3 open gate direct log video with highlight correction, or highlight compensation correction turned on at 24 frames per second without getting dropped frames. And so far I've been pretty pleased with this. I should mention dropped frames as well. I kind of touched on it earlier, but you have to do testing to make sure that your device can actually support these types of resolutions at these frame rates without dropping frames. Because if you notice down here, there's only one sync point, and this sync point drives all of the matching information. It matches the this particular line of gyro data with a particular frame of video. And if any of those are off, you will not get good information. You won't get good stabilization. And that's the reason why having a clean video without any drop frames is important. If you have a dropped frame, your gyro information is off. If you have 2 dropped frames, any amount of dropped frames, your gyro information will not be synced up, and you will have to fix that, you have to meticulously add in more gyro sync points until you find where that dropped frame is, and then place a gyro sync point right before and right after that dropped frame in order to re-sync your video to your gyro. And the unfortunate part is I don't know of any way to detect where the dropped frame is in the video. I do think there are ways, I just haven't dug into it because I don't want to deal with that, so I'm only shooting at frame rates and resolutions that produce stable video. One last thing that I'll end on is that if you are planning on using Gyroflow plugin in DaVinci Resolve, what you should do if you don't want to export is that after you stabilize or have your sync point, and let's get it synced there, everything is looking good. If I want to, if I'm working in a 16:9 timeline, I want to make sure that I have the export settings set here, because when you go to save the project file, and I think it's the including gyro data one. Yeah, that exports a Gyroflow file. When you go to save this, the aspect ratio is kind of baked in there, and that will prevent headaches in DaVinci Resolve later. So let's take this video file, put it in here. Yeah, sure, I'll change the frame rate. Load it in here. Let's go to my effects. I have it favorited. Drag the effect on, and when you want to stabilize this, you're going to want to browse for that Gyroflow file. So I think, yeah, this was 11th of May. Okay, details. There's the Gyroflow file that corresponds to my video. This is 332, this is also 332, so I double click this, and there we go. And it should, if it plays, should work perfectly. Although MotionCam files in DaVinci kind of play a bit heavy. And yeah, there we go. That's perfect stabilization. And you can tell that things are looking good because the status says OK right here. And all of the parameters that we said before, or that we had set, such as horizon lock to 100, those are carried over, and we now get perfect video stabilization from the raw video. That means that we can jump over to our color grading thing, color grade the raw video without doing any transcoding, such as exporting. And I don't want to discourage people from exporting their video from Gyroflow and just exporting it as another MP3, then throwing it in there. I've done that. It looks fine. You don't have to be a purist about these things. Just tell good stories, and you can absolutely do that by exporting video and then bringing that into your editor and just working with a stabilized video. Sometimes the DaVinci plugin just bugs out, doesn't work well, and I will just then say, whatever, I'll export the video and bring it in here. Okay, I think that is it. This was meant to be a quick video, but alas, here I am at 23 minutes. I hope you found this helpful, and as if you have any other questions or concerns, feel free to chat with us MotionCam users in the Discord. We always love to help and keep creating wonderful content.